Hello everyone, welcome to the high-flying and web-slinging comic book vault. Today in the vault we're going to take a look at Amazing Spider-Man number 400. And you say, does it not have a cover? What's with the cover? Well, it has this like white cover that probably on camera looks like it's just flat white, there's nothing on it, but if you look really close at it, you can see that it's kind of embossed, and it's actually kind of a neat cover, although when you try to take a picture of it, it looks, like just white, and it's kind of irritating. Anyway, you pop it open, and you actually have this really nice cover here from Bagley. So this issue is the, spoiler warning, death of Aunt May, and of course they didn't keep her dead. This didn't stick at all, but in the context of just this issue by itself, it's pretty touching, and it's pretty well done. This is in the middle of the Clone Saga, which is, of course, remembered as being really convoluted, really all over the place, and really soap opera, and very irritating. And a lot of people thought that it went on too long, and it was all over the place, and people don't remember it very fondly. But I do like a lot of things about this issue. This is done by Mateus, mostly. There's a couple of little stories in the back also that are kind of dealing with kind of some flashbacks of stuff that happens in the issue, but I'll mostly just talk about the main story itself. This is about Scarlet Spider kind of showing up when Aunt May is sick in the hospital. And of course, if you don't know anything about Clone Saga, basically there are these clones of Spider-Man, and one of them is Ben Reilly, who thought he was Peter Parker for the longest time, and then found out that he's actually a clone. Or is he? Which one is actually the clone? And that's the toss-up question thrown around and thrown in your face all the way through the Clone Saga. But anyway, he shows up outside of Aunt May's hospital room just as she wakes up from a coma. I guess she'd been in a coma for a while, and seems to be just fine. She wants to go home, and the lady at the hospital, her nurse, tries to get her to stay at the hospital, but she refuses, and it's a little bit strange because, of course, in the real world, if you had just woken up for a coma, they wouldn't take no for an answer. You'd be an inpatient, and you wouldn't get to make that choice for yourself. You would have to stay at the hospital. But anyway, whatever. The next morning, she is allowed to leave because she wants to, and basically, she and Peter Parker kind of go and have a good time out at the top of the Empire State Building, and he thinks that she needs to stay home and have bed rest, and of course she doesn't want to do that, and basically she takes him up there to tell him that she knows that he's Spider-Man, and that she's known for a long time, and she says, I would have been an idiot not to know. And I think that's really great, where it turns out that the real reason that she had constantly, and especially even in early Stan Lee stories, always said Peter, Spider-Man is a terrible influence, and I hate him. He's doing all these horrible things. It was actually her way of trying to push away the fact that she knew that Peter Parker was Spider-Man and try to distance herself from it. And I thought that was really interesting. Basically, just before she dies, she gives her blessing on Spider-Man, and the idea is that she wasn't really fit enough to go home. She wasn't really ready to get up and start doing things. She was, in fact, close to death, and knew she was close to death, and did that thing where she is able to stay alive, to keep herself alive long enough to finish this unfinished business and to give Peter some sage advice. And really, it's a little bit heavy-handed, but it works for the most part. Pretty much everything that comes out of her mouth is some kind of sage wisdom, which might be irritating in another story, but it seems like she's trying to get it all out before she inevitably passes away. And I think that there is definitely a real-world component to that. I've heard of a lot of stories, and I've known, I've known about this from even my own great-grandparents, that sometimes when you get to a certain age, you can just feel that it's almost your time to go, and that you can kind of you can kind of will yourself to stay alive long enough to fulfill whatever you feel like has been unfulfilled. And then when you're when you're ready to go, you kind of peacefully just say, okay, now I'm ready to go. And I guess it's a little bit morbid, but I suppose it can be true. You hear stories sometimes of people that have been married for decades and who always thought that they would die around the same time, and then that actually ends up happening. And sometimes it doesn't seem like coincidence. Like I said, my great-grandparents died within hours of each other, and there's something romantic about that. I don't know. And I think it's kind of sad that like Uncle Ben is taken prematurely, so he and May don't have that. That's not in this story, but I found myself thinking about the fact that they didn't get to go together, and that maybe that's how it would have happened with them had he died naturally, since they seemed like they were kind of soulmates. And you see them buried next to each other in this, and it's sad, but it's also really touching and gratifying. And I find myself wishing that they had kept this and that it had stuck. Aunt May was very elderly. It was her time to go, and this issue was all about how it was her time to go. It's really sad that didn't stick, and I won't get into why and what they ended up doing with it, but I do think that if Aunt May was going to get killed off in the comics, this was the way to do it, and don't bring her back to life. This is just another chapter in the life of Peter Parker. These stories had been published for over 30 years by this point. This was 1995, and very, very slowly you had these different, chapters of Peter's life. People had died before in his life, and I think that it would have made a lot of sense, and it would have been very interesting to see how Peter had, continued his life without this very important person in his life who had always been his mentor and his best friend, and now he found could have even been a confidant. So I think that it's a good story for that. The Clone Saga stuff does bring it down a little bit, although I think that I do find myself feeling for Ben Reilly in this, that he doesn't get to be there with Aunt May when she dies, because from his perspective, he's Peter Parker too, and he remembers her raising him. There's this surreal moment where he and Peter are both in their costumes, standing out in the backyard, where Ben's kind of reminiscing about a tree that Peter had climbed, and it's just kind of weird seeing them both in costume in the backyard. But anyway, I do think that this is a good issue by itself. I'm not saying anything about the Clone Saga altogether as a piece, but I think that this is a really good milestone kind of issue, and I miss this, where like these really big life-changing kinds of moments would happen in these big milestone kind of issues, where these days when you get something like this, you'll have a story that maybe is homaging older stories, or maybe is trying to be a big thing, but then it's forgotten about a few issues later. I guess in a way that sort of happened with this too, considering that Aunt May's death didn't really stick, but still, this felt like a big deal, and by itself, I think it's worth reading if you can read it kind of out of context of the rest of everything else. Anyway, I do have a copy of this on sale this week on the Comic Vault if you're interested in procuring yourself a copy, and I also have some other fun stuff online right now as well. If you want to go to wearegeeksnotnerds.com, click on the Comic Vault. That'll show you all of the ads we have on eBay right now, and if you want to, you can go there and find some cheap comics that you can buy directly from me from the Comic Vault. Go check it out, and if you want several auctions, we do combine wins to save you on shipping, so it's easy to get lots of fun, cheap stuff from me, and I'm starting to put things back online again, and over the next few months, I'll have at least a few items on every week. So anyway, I'll go check it out if you're interested, and also if you'd ever like to send anything for me to review on the Vault, if you ever want to donate anything, or you want to let me borrow something that you're just raring to see me review, go ahead and send those to the Comic Vault. That's Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. I'm Captain Logan, and happy reading.